Just all I saw was smoke.
Okay, you're good to go, Ed. We're not doing YouTube live streaming any longer.
Okay, very good. Then welcome to the March 3rd regular meeting of the Board of Estimate and Taxation. Madam Clerk, may I get you to call a roll, please?
Mayor Rilling, Mr. Abrams,
Here.
Mr. Camacho, Mr. Constant,
Here.
Mr. Jelleret,
Here.
Mr. Casimis, Miss Yang.
Here.
4, we have a quorum.
Thank you. Very first item of business that I would like to bring up, and I'll need a motion, please, is given some of the other agenda items we have this evening that are likely to take some period of time, I want to propose that we move Alan Dutton's report on Oak Hills up to follow the transfer agenda, so before other business. Can I get somebody to move to make that agenda change, please?
So moved. It's me, Troy.
Thank you, Troy. All in favor of switching the agenda around a little bit, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, Alan, we'll get you out of here a little bit early this evening.
Your lucky day, Al.
Always my lucky day at this meeting. Thank you.
There you
Especially
go.
now I said once every 3 months. 3 months. Thank you.
What else can we do for you?
All
Al?
right, there you go. All right, second order of business is approval of the minutes from our February 10th meeting. Can I get that item moved for discussion,
So moved,
please?
Troy.
Thank you, Troy. Any amendments, changes, revisions to the minutes as presented in our package?
I have two changes,
So
typos.
do I.
One on page 5, where it discusses the purchase of the 6 Butler properties for $322,000. That should be $392,000. Then I saw it subsequently, there's a typo where it says Cody, C-O-E-Y, and City, C-I-T-Y.
Sorry, and what was the 322 becomes what? 352?
392.
392. Thank you.
And there's a typo where it says Cody instead of City.
And where's that? Is that after that?
Yeah, it's after that. Here, let me see. Yeah, here we are. It's on page 9, second paragraph, last sentence.
Anything in the Cody budget should be city, right? Is
Yes,
that what you
correct.
said? Yeah, that's what I saw too. Good.
Yep.
Oh, are you finished, Anna?
I'm done.
On that same page, number 9, in the looks like 4th paragraph, starting with my name is Jelleret. It says two of the second sentence says 2 of the year 2 of the phase in. It should be phase in.
Okay.
And that's all I have.
Anything else? Seeing no additional changes or revisions, all in favor of approving the minutes as amended and commented on this evening, signify by saying aye, please. Aye. Opposed, abstentions, the minutes are approved. Thank you very, very much. All right. Next on our agenda, excuse me, is there are no special appropriations this evening, but the transfer agenda. Tom, do you want to start to speak to the transfer agenda that we can find in our package as I scroll through it?
Sure. The first
11.
one is sorry again. Sorry.
They start on page 11 for everyone.
Yeah, sorry, I thought somebody said something. Yeah, first one is a request from contingency totaling $70,000 for some office renovations and conference room renovations. We have Tom Livingston here to speak to that one.
Yeah, thank you. So as many of you may know, there's a real issue of lack of space in City Hall. And so we've been looking at alternatives in terms of how we might address that. And so what we have an immediate need right now in terms of a space for a person in TMP who has, quite frankly, a sort of office sitting where there's a vacant office, and we're trying to come up with a long-term solution. for that person, as well as some crowded conditions in TMP. They were put in space before their role was really defined, as well as a problem with lack of conference room space in City Hall, particularly during election season, where the registers of voters tend to take over space for extended periods of time. So what we've come up with, and what this $70,000 would do, is to take an underutilized employee lounge at the first floor of the building down by past the registrar's office, and convert that into a couple of offices, and then take what now currently a storage room across Lowe's office, also on the first floor, and turn to a small conference room. Not fancy. It just would just to turn that into usable space. And so that's what the funds are for.
Okay.
Answer any questions.
Thomas Troy, how much square footage are we talking? How much space are you talking about here?
I'm sorry, I don't have the number. Alan, I don't know if you have that handy. Alan hasn't been really involved. Neil Rennie is.
I don't have the information available either. It's
I'm sorry, I don't
basically
have
space for about for 4 or 5 staff person. That's it. It's a very tight space.
very tight.
So the space is going to be used, cut up. How many people will be occupying it after it's done?
Well, so the thinking right now is that we would take the existing offices, sort of office suite, if you will, for the Chief of Economic Community Development, down to this employee lounge, and create the same number of offices, which I think is, well, 2 offices, some carrels outside, and yeah, that's about it down there. It's very small. And then take the existing ECD space and put a couple staff members from across the hall there. It's not for hiring new people. It's just to accommodate the people we have.
Mhm.
Right, but how many people will be occupying this space after this project is intended
That
to?
space, I anticipate 1, 2, 3, 3 or 4. The Chief of Economic Community Development, the Director of Business and Tourism, another staff member, and an executive assistant, or whatever we call them. So 4 people.
I mean, I'm not a contractor or anything, but usually you go by the amount of space, and there's a number that you use for renovations or new builds. If somebody knows what the amount of space is, then you could kind of figure 70,000 is just out there. I don't even know. Is it 5,000 square feet? I don't know.
We can get that number, certainly. I mean, it's an architect did come in and look at the space and determine that's what would fit there. And it's certainly not excessive offices by any stretch of the imagination. It's normal size, so to speak. The advantage, by the way, of that space in terms of making it for the Chief of Economic Community Development is it has its own door to the front of the building, which means that somebody who just wanted to come in and work with ECD could come right in there, be very welcoming.
I'm
I
sorry,
hear what
Troy,
you're saying.
I'm sorry, Troy, just a point of order before you continue the conversation. I forgot to ask somebody to move the discussion on the transfer items.
I'll move it. So move. Sorry.
Thank you. I'm really sorry to interrupt, but I didn't want to get too much further down the road.
Yeah,
Please
I would
proceed.
just like to know what the square footage is, because I mean, with any renovation, Al, you guys know this. It's per foot. There's a number, and we don't even know how big the space is, and 70,000 is just
Well,
a number I can't relate to. That's all.
70,000 includes, as I understand it, both the electrical, all electrical, that stuff of work, as well as some furnishing to the extent we don't already have it in the building.
Right.
So it covers everything. It's not just to fit out. It's not the office space. It's also any needed additional furniture. It shouldn't be much.
To Troy's point, that's 1,000, let's say it's 500 square feet. That's $140 a square foot. And you can do new construction. I built a 1,600 square foot garage for $20,000. So I recognize I didn't have to union labor, but it does it does seem high. So maybe there is a way to just go back and look at it with a sharper pencil, given that this is directly coming out of contingency.
Oh, we will certainly do that. We're not we're not trying to luxurious space. I can tell you that the breakdown in terms of the fit out for the conference room was, I think, 10,000 with but it puts a little more on top of that. And it so not all the money. I mean, it's 10,000 without furniture in that room, I believe. But
Yeah, I guess, Tom, I kind of stand with Ann and Troy from the standpoint of it's, to throw out a round number is fine, but without any of the understanding of the line item detail, it's very difficult to know, is 70,000 right? Is 7,000 right? Is 700,000 right? I would suggest that we get a little bit more line item detail and bring this back in a future meeting for approval. I just don't feel like there's enough detail to approve it.
okay. Fine. Tell me, I can get whatever you need. Would you like to see like an estimate from a contractor? Would that help?
Well, you threw out a few different items that are part of this renovation. You threw out furnishings, you threw out electrical, you threw out refit of the building. Just some of those basic line items, as well as the square footage we're talking about, gives this board a better sense of what we're spending on, rather than just, and I know it's not the case, but what seems like a relatively random number at the moment.
Well, this is okay. I'm
I
happy to
agree
do
with
it.
that.
I'm happy to do that. I mean, just again, this number was provided by the facilities manager, not Alan, Neil Rennie. So I didn't make it up, but I'm happy to.
No, I understand, and I'm sure the detail is there, and at next month's meeting, we can quickly look at the detail and move forward with this, but it feels irresponsible right now to approve a transfer without any real detail as to what drove that number. And I'm not being critical. I know you don't have it, so let's bring it back when you do.
Okay, I'll bring it back next month. All right, thank you.
So are we tabling that, Ed, or do we do anything, or just,
My recommendation would be that we table this for a month and come back on it, but we'll vote on all of the transfers together, unless, actually,
yeah, you got to do that one separately.
yeah, I need someone to move the specific discussion of the operations and public works building management transfer for decision on how we will move forward.
So moved, Troy.
Thank you. The recommendation is that you come back next month with more detail on that. All in favor from a BET perspective signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Tom, you'll just bring it back next month.
Okay,
So now
Absolutely.
let's
Okay.
move.
All
Thanks.
right, thank you.
Now can I get somebody to move the Rex and Park transfers so we can discuss and approve, or,
So moved, Troy.
thank you, Troy.
all right, yeah, this next one, I just want to point out quickly, the summary on page 11 has the incorrect account numbers and an incorrect total when they were moved over from the detail sheet that was missed. So the numbers and the total that you want and the account numbers that you want to look at is on page 13, the detail sheet from Ken Hughes. That is correct. So the total of 76,824 with the corresponding account numbers is the correct one to go off of. And we do have Mr. Hughes here to talk to this. Go ahead, Ken.
Good evening, Chairman and members of the board. So Rec and Parks, we're about a week and a half, 2 weeks away from entering our busy season. Part of that busy season requires us hiring part-time help, which we do every year. So this is sort of a little bit of housekeeping and a look ahead on what we'll need up to July 1. So as you can see from the sheet provided, we're moving some money around in our wages and salary, part-time and temporary accounts, just to cover some shortages we think we'll have leading into July 1.
Okay. Any questions for Ken on this transfer? All right, that being the case, all in favor of approving the transfer as presented, signify by saying aye. All right, opposed, abstentions. Ken, your transfer is approved.
Thank you, appreciate it.
All right, so now, per the motion we made at the beginning of the meeting, before we get into other business, Alan, we're going to turn the floor to you to give the Oak Hills Authority update.
Good evening, BET members, Mr. Chairman. I kind of missed you. It's been 3 months, but it's okay. I'm not really complaining. And it is a quiet time for us at Oak Hills Park. I do have you probably did get the financials for December, January. We don't have the February financials yet. 2 very, very slow months for us. The weather has been pretty miserable, as we all know, for those of us that live in this part of the world. So just a quick snapshot of December and then January, and then perhaps then where we are year to date. So in December, we were budgeted to lose $50,000 as we do during this slow period of time. We actually lost $70,000 on a net basis, and that was all basically play. We had, I think, no play at all in December, really, and we did have some play last year. So, but we were able to keep it to 20,000. So 20,000 in the hole for the month of December. Moving to January, similar situation. Nothing going on in January in the golf course again. A lot of snow, and we were budgeted to lose $107,000. We actually lost $128,000 on a net basis. But we did receive, it would have been more of a, revenue. This is a good time we get revenue from our ID cards and from, annual passes and stuff. So that did work out quite well for us. But we did lose another $20,000. So 20,000 in December, 20,000 in January. So where are we on a year-to-date basis? Well, the news is still good. After 7 months, we find ourselves $190,000 better than budget on a profit basis, with a number of $309,000 profit after 7 months. Now we come into March, April, May, and June, which are our busy times, hopefully, especially April, May, June. So we look forward to continuing the trend as far as Oak Hills is concerned. I have a couple of other issues to talk about, but are there any other questions on the financials or on the numbers?
Alan's Troy, welcome. We haven't seen you in a while, but welcome.
Thank you.
My question is, I'm looking at your Oak Hills Park Authority P&L current year versus prior year to date, and I'm looking at the restaurant line item. Why is that number down from last year? It was 17,000 this year and 27,000 last year in a transition year. So
we did negotiate a different deal with these guys. We gave them, I think we gave them a deal where the rent was low and it was based on I think the rent was only $1,000, and then it was based upon business. And the business has not been what we would, what was kind of budgeted and thought of. And that's the kind of the reason. I think Don's deal, he had $4,000 just a straight payment. It wasn't a percentage of revenue. So the deal we did with O'Dean's is kind of heavily weighted to the amount of business they do. I think that's the main reason behind it, Troy.
So are you saying that they're current? Is there any issues with payments?
No issues.
Or is this
whatsoever.
a negotiated agreement?
No, it's part of the negotiated agreement. There's no change to the agreement, and they're paying on time. There's no issues there. They're not short of money. It's not a cash flow thing. In fact, they're putting a lot of money into the, they're spending a lot of money on bands, and I can get into that, as we move further forward. What is the, how is the winter doing for them, in the first year? But it's a negotiation now. Next year, the rent goes up $1,000, etc. We wanted to keep it as low as possible in the first year, to be very honest with you.
So my final question is are you happy with them, and are they happy with us at this point in time?
100%. So if any of you do attend our meetings, the Zoom meetings, John Lloyd attends, and he attends every meeting, which is a little different from what happened in the past. And, it's the first year for them. But I don't know if any of you have been there. I've been in the winter, Friday nights, there's a bunch of us go there. The food is really good. It's a tough market for them during the winter, but they're kind of getting rid of a niche in the way of entertainment. Friday night, Saturday night, brunch on Sunday. It's starting to build a bit. It's the first year, and I am happy with them. And we're also working with them very closely on the events, the outings on Mondays, because in the past the outings we had, a lot of these vendors would come and just they wouldn't give any business to the people. They'd come in, they'd bring their own booze, they'd have a tent, they'd have all these people. We put a stop to all that. Okay, we said no. If you want to come here, you're going to have to work with us and give some business to our vendor. You can't come in with another liquor license and bring liquor. So we're working with them on that, and they're very happy with that. Troy.
And that's always something I've always said. If you're going to have an outing there on a Monday, you have mandatory should be using that restaurant for your event afterwards.
Right.
And the other thing, the last point I want to make, when you do your new rates, I know you just did your rates things a couple of months last month, but I would just always just keep in mind that if you're going to increase things, you shouldn't increase them across the board for non-residents and residents. You might want to favor doing increases for non-residents and favor residents when you're looking to do increases. That's all. I think that's something you should just keep in mind.
I agree 100%, and that is my philosophy as well. That the people of Norwalk who pay taxes and should get a good benefit, and when it comes to increases, go after the increases that will be better for us, because the non-residents pay more anyway. So I agree.
Yeah, the demand there is so strong. I just think I didn't see. It seemed like you were giving almost kind of an even break. I mean, an even cost increase to both residents and non-residents. But I would say in the future, just keep that in mind. There's no problem selling tea times there.
100%. Just a couple of other things briefly, if I may. We have had a couple of staffing issues at Oak Hills, primarily in our greens department, believe it or not. Jim Shell, I'm pleased to say, is not one of them. But our assistant, Tiz, who's a great guy, has taken a position as the assistant green superintendent at New Canaan Country Club. But we have filled that position. That is not a tough position to fill, because we do have housing, and we do pay a somewhat competitive salary for that area. So that's not too hard to fill. We also lost Jeff, who was our foreman, who had been with us for 30 years. And we lost him not because he didn't like working at Oak Hills, it was because of our benefits. And his, we do have benefits for him and his spouse, but we're such a small group. There's only about 4, 5, 6 between management and 3 or 4 full-time employees. So we're such a small group, but the benefit plan that we have for our employees is not great. So I have been, and he's gone to work at Gale of Brennan in Stamford. He gets full benefits, and it is much better for him. We also, our mechanic, Glenn, he was able to triple his salary and go to a country club in Greenwich and work as a mechanic. So we've had to adjust our salaries, not for the superintendent, assistant superintendent, but for the foreman, gone up a little bit, and also for our mechanic, which will affect us a little bit, but we have replaced all those positions, which is good. But benefits is an issue. I have been working with the city a little bit. You guys are self-funded, I believe, so they don't really want to add anybody else from Oak Hills, but we did have a suggestion. There's a Connecticut coalition that has people that work in not-for-profits, municipalities. We may be able to join. We're getting some pushback, so I've reached out to Bob Duff to see if he can help us. But apart from that, we're doing fine.
I would see if you could somehow get into the city's plan or for their benefits, health plans and stuff. I don't know if that's possible. We might find some synergies there. And also, Tiz will be missed. He was very good.
He's a great guy. I think Tiz was happy. It's a family situation, whatever it is. And I have to say, it is tough for municipal golf courses to compete with country clubs. It really is. But anyway, any other questions?
Yeah, Alan, I have an observation. I will tell you that I did make the Sunday brunch a couple of weeks ago, and the service was stellar, and the food was very, very tasty. I'll definitely be back again, and they whet my appetite for the barbecue fiestas.
Nice to hear. Nice to hear, Tom. Thank you.
All right, very good. Any last questions for Alan? Alan, thank you as always. We'll see you in a few months. Enjoy
Thank
the
you.
time off.
Bye-bye.
All right, following our agenda, we're now moving to section C. The first item is a special capital appropriation. Can I get that moved for discussion and approval, please?
I'll move it, Troy.
Thank you, Troy.
Yeah, for this one, we do have Alan Lowe on the line to discuss this, but before we get to him, Jared is going to kick this one off with a little bit of a background and a refresher for the board members. Go ahead, Jared.
Yes, good evening, everybody. Thank you. Thanks, Tom. So this may look somewhat familiar to you. This is the HVAC program that has been discussed a number of times and really got a lot of good news on it last year when the state determined that it was going to be able to give us a grant for a large portion of this. In order to apply for that grant last year, the board approved the city share. So approved to appropriate the city share of the project, which was about $14.4 million, 40% of it. So what remained after that was the state share. That hasn't been appropriated yet, even though it's not the city's money per se. It's a grant from the state. We still have to appropriate the money. The board has to give us the authority to spend that money. And so that hasn't been done yet. And so that's why Alan is before you this evening to talk about some of the details of this to the extent that you need more information. But the overall amount looks like a lot of money. All this is authorizing us to spend the state share of this project.
And Jared, one question from me before I turn it to the rest of the board. That grant is approved from the state perspective, locked in from the state perspective. There is no risk of reneging on the state commitment to the city for the $21 million. It is simply a timing and approval issue. Is that a correct statement?
I will say, Alan, you can maybe weigh in here. I would say it's as locked in as any state grant could be.
Yeah, the grant. Good evening. Actually, it must be Alan night tonight. I've got Alan before and me here. Yes, I mean the approval is done by the state through a state special legislation actions kind of thing. So it is by, I mean, the state approved these projects. So it's not like it's a formal award by the state. So I've never seen the state would actually cancel a pre-approved funding project because it's a committed funding for 6 different projects for the city. Jim Giuliano is here tonight. I mean, he has more dealing with the state in terms of grant project kind of thing. Jim, can you input on this too? I mean, you've seen other communities and other things that happen in other communities.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the project from the state's perspective, you went through the grant application process and the state approved that grant application, now has committed the funding to the city of Norwich in the amounts identified in the 6 different projects.
Norwalk, Jim.
I'm sorry?
You said Norwich by accident.
Norwalk, excuse me. I'm getting my towns mixed up here. So yeah, the funding has been approved, and we have a grant commitment letter, I believe, that was forwarded to the Board of Ed for signature. So with that, you are locked in with the state for the funding on this.
And Alan and Jim, just to clarify, this is fully state funding, correct? There's no portion of this that's federal that would be, might get caught up in anything going federally, correct?
Yes. I mean, a couple of years ago, the city awarded the city reimbursable rate went from probably from these projects, probably like 20 or 30% to 60% reimbursement. I think part of the kind of interesting fact is that because of change in the old days, when you do a smaller project, the city would be able to come up with the money pretty easily because the city share is like 80 to 70%. But nowadays, with the new reimbursable rate, the city portion only 40% roughly. So the state share is much bigger. So it's kind of interesting, kind of like a reverse effect a little bit that because now we are carrying these projects and then the state share is much higher. So it creates a little kind of different dynamic in terms of financially. But me and Jim's office, we are working together to be much more aggressive in terms of going after the state interim reimbursement. So as we're doing the projects, we are setting up to be asking for reimbursement of state for every month or process every month, so that when we do approve this money for state share, we're not really outlaying. If we ask for state share, let's say $1 million, we're not outlaying that money $1 million at all. I mean, we'd be asking reimbursement every month or month and a half, whatever it may be. So it's really not like a cash flowing the state share for the full amount for laying for the project. It's only like at the end, the state is hold at 5% for retainage. So really is that, by doing this, we have the ability to carry the state share for a little bit during the construction process, as well as the end for the 5% retains the state holds. Other than that, it's really not a burden to the city. And just one final note is that these HVAC projects, typically they're not reimbursable by the state. State does not reimburse replacement work and replacing boilers and stuff like that, or air conditioning unit. They consider that's a maintenance responsibility or repair maintenance responsibility for the district or local community. That's why they set up this grant so that they are reimbursable. So that's the reason why we apply for all these 6 projects. And we are in the middle of going out to bid on some of them, and also it's the original completion date is end of this year. We have asked for extension because these projects, some of them require abatement. And also in today's world, the manufacturing mechanical equipment takes around 16 weeks or so for delivery and all. So some of the project we are going to start some work this summer. Some of them are going to be made. Most of the construction is going to happen in the summer of 2026. There's also a possibility that some of these projects we actually do a second shift work during the school year. We'll work with the school administration to figure out which project absolutely need to do that during the school year. But we will look to do the abatement, any kind of abatement work during the summer of this year or beginning of summer of 2026. So there's a lot of work involved. I mean, when you talk about $35 million total, it's a substantial work because it's 6 different projects for six different schools.
Mhm. Other questions for Alan and Jim?
Yeah, Alan, this is Troy. Couple of things on your memo, page 17. You say on your second paragraph, we are confirming with the state whether we're waiting in the Narragansett schools installation of the new central air conditioning projects would be eligible as indoor air quality improvement projects under normal grant process. If so, we may consider the deletion of these 2 projects from the HVAC grant application process. Where are we with that?
We are eligible to get reimbursement for those projects.
So if they're staying on the list as you have
Yes,
it.
yes. They approved all 6 projects. I think that's the old memo from when we're applying. Is that what you're reading?
I'm reading
This is
your
like
memo in our
2023, right?
package.
Yeah, that's the
dated
old
in
memo I attached.
October
so-
17th to 2023.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
so
there's 2 memos, yeah. Go ahead, Alan.
Yeah, I'm trying to, maybe I shouldn't attach it because it's just, I'm trying to give more comprehensive history on what happened. That memo was prepared when we applied for the 6 different projects. And we weren't sure that we were going to, when we apply for 6 projects, we don't know how many projects we're actually going to get. And those 2 projects are a little weaker in a sense than the other project in terms of like ability to get approval. But turn out they approve all 6 projects.
Okay, so it's the list. Okay. And the other thing it says, did you say these are going to take, how long do you think it will take to complete all 6 projects? How many years?
We requested extension for completion date to December of 2026.
So that's another year, right?
Yeah.
And do these grants and your numbers include, because if you put something in a later memo, what's going to talk about the schools, you say you assume a 3.5% escalation every year. Is that number built in here? And if there is an escalation, will we get it back from the state of the costs?
These projects are estimated based on, again, we can go on for an hour to talk about this estimating and projections and stuff like that. These projects are based on construction of this year as well as next year. So some of these projects actually going to go out to bid in about 2 months or so. So the pricing is based on current bidding. So 2025 bidding pricing. With the understanding some of the work is going to happen next summer. So you have to understand that cost estimating is really challenging, like a better profession. When you do cost estimate, what we did in terms of come up with this budget number is last year we did a conceptual design and cost estimating. So a lot of things wasn't established at that point, just like environmental remediation. How you have to design a mechanical system to figure out where you need to do abatement and how much you have to do. So there's a lot of estimating involved. So when you get down to it, yes, we do estimating and projecting, we believe at this point we are holding those numbers are holding. The reason being is that out of the 6 projects, we actually bid one already, which is a Brookside School. We budget $3.3 million. I think the bids came in at $2 million plus soft costs. So by the time we're done, we should be around $2.5 million. And the budget for that project is 3.3. So for that project, we are below what our budget number is. Okay, so it's the whole evolution of design. So when you do a conceptual design, you really haven't specified the equipment, how many, you're replacing 6 pieces of equipment, you add another piece, blah, 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 on and on. So there's, again, like I said, it's a conceptual design phase and estimating. So typically we do 2 estimates at least for these projects. So we did one, and then for this project for Brookside, we're expediting it, and we didn't do a second estimate, but we just ran out to bid, and the bid number came in favorably. So for this project, we did pretty well.
Okay, so it sounds like you're saying that this is not going to be a long-term, these shouldn't be long-term more than a year out, and that you're comfortable with this number. And then if there is an increase in any bids or anything, that you feel that you would be able to get the difference from the state in our guaranteed portion.
Right. The state does not look at these. They just approve the total project amount. So when the bids comes in, let's say Brookside School, right? We budget $3.3 million. We're out to bid, the construction bid is $2.1 million, and their soft costs probably like $200,000 or so. So again, at the end of the day, the project is going to be $2.5 million. The state does not look at the detail about escalating costs and stuff. It's really we building all that number in it, and we are looking forward to and hoping that we'll be within those numbers as the project develops. It's a bit of an evolution and continue working to find the balance and how much, how little, and how to control costs. Even the type of equipment you specify and how much work we have to do, it's all check and balance to the extent that we try to maintain within our budgets.
Okay, thank you.
And please.
I have a couple of process questions. So Tom, there are 3 memos in here. There's the one from February 23, and then there's 2 dated, one and one from the mayor. Is the one you and the mayor identical?
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, there may be a few words changed here and there, but just procedurally, something must come from the CFO's office, something must come from the mayor.
Okay, that's fine. So talking about, is the amount that we have been authorized by the state that they will reimburse us $21,540,473, which is the total amount for all 6 projects of the state share?
I don't know, Alan, do you have a view on that?
There's 6 separate projects, so each one has a specific dollar amount of state reimbursement approved for each project. So I think that's the total amount is added. Tom, I believe you added those numbers together to give
Yeah,
us
so
the
the total project cost is just under 36 million, but that's split 14 and 25 at 22.
Okay,
It's 40, it's state reimbursement 60%.
right.
Right.
Alan, you said that the amount that we're gonna get paid is based upon the total amount. So if one comes in over and comes in under,
Yeah, it's going to be individual projects. So that's one of the disadvantage because each one is individual approval. So if there's any excess amount, I can't put it onto the other project. If the one
And-
other project is short, that becomes a problem.
right, okay, so, okay, I think that's a little bit different than when interpreted how you answered Troy's question. And this is a question for Tom and Jared. Where is these capital expenditures, have they been budgeted, approved? And where are the funds gonna come from when we start spending the money?
They were budgeted and approved last year.
The 14 million was and approved.
Correct.
And when we start to spend the 14 million we've budgeted plus the state share of 21, where does that money come from? Is it in funds that we have in our bank because of our bonding? Or do we need to bond for any additional amounts?
I believe what we did was in talking to Alan that we waited and didn't, we bonded a small piece during our last bond issuance because the piece that we knew was going to get done in that time frame between the time that we issued the bonds and the following year, this year when we will go issue bonds, was going to be a small amount. There was going to be some design engineering. And so we bonded that amount, which was, Alan, 1.5 million, somewhere in that range, just to cover that amount. And then the bulk of the work would be done following that, following our next bond issuance around, July or so, August timeframe of this year. And so the rest will be bonded. The rest of the city's portion will be bonded then. And then the balance is obviously state grant money, which you're, authorizing now, hopefully.
Right, so, okay, so we're gonna bond for our, call it 13 million of our share in July. But now, where are the funds gonna come from? Because it sounds like what we're approving tonight is to spend the state money, have the work done, and get reimbursed. So where is the money gonna come for us to pay the bills, which we then look to get reimbursed? Does that come from additional bond, or is it just come from cash?
The cash pool, it comes from the city's cash pool. But like I said, that given the timing of it, the bulk of it is not going to hit until, until after July. So like, there may be a small portion that we need to use some city cash for until the bonding occurs and we get the bond proceeds, but that'll be a short period of time and it'll be a very small amount of money relatively.
Okay, but so the 21 million that we have to front for the state, and we probably won't get reimbursed until 2026, is that going to come from bonding?
Well, that would come from state cash. To the extent that we don't have the bond proceeds at that point in time, then it would come from state cash.
But
I think this is similar to, and correct me if I'm wrong, Alan, but I think this is similar to the schools where you're submitting constant progress reports, and somewhere between 30 and 60 days later, you're getting a reimbursement from the state. Is that correct? And once we're up and running with the initial submittals, it gets smoother and smoother as the process goes along. Is that correct?
Yes, I think the question about whether how much we're looking for the state shares about $21 million. I think that potentially the city, I'm speaking a little out of terms, so forgive me, Jared and Tom, but I would think that as portion of this, we may have to bond or get it from some other city source of money to cover it. But a good portion of the $21 million would be because we asked for interim reimbursement from the state. As the project moves forward, we'll be getting some of this fund in already. So our $21 million, we may need at the end of the project, maybe we may need about 5% of that because the state hold back 5%. So they do the auditing probably in about 3 years after we complete these projects. So we are out short 5% of the $21 million for roughly, let's say, 3 to 4 years. So I think that may need, whether we bond it or use city surplus fund here, whatever to cover it. But again, I'm speaking a little out of term here. So in any event, so I think we should be able to carry this project with, with minimum of bond money because we are requesting interim reimbursement from the state as we move forward.
So in the long run, to kind of summarize that, over the next year or two, Alan, what's the time frame for doing all of them?
We should be finished before end of December 2026, in a year and a half from now.
Okay, so in that time, we'll exhaust basically the bond proceeds that we will issue, as well as the state share will be exhausted. And then so the only thing that we'll have to cover, as Alan said, would be the 5% that the state would retain. And that piece of it, we'll make the decision at that time about what to do with it. Right now, I would say that we would just we would use city cash to float city cash for it.
Okay, that's fine. And my last question is Alan, your estimate from 3 years ago in the February 2023 memo is the same as this year's memo. So it's 2 years forward. Do you build enough cushion in your estimating from 2023 that an increase in costs over the 2-year period has been accounted for? So that the numbers are identical from the February 23 to the March 2025.
It's not an easy answer to that. I mean, we do our estimate based on our best knowledge. But the last couple of years, it's been a little, the construction industry has been a little, even though it's slowed down, I mean, it's improved a little bit, but at the same time is that there are potentially new issues because there are a number of these projects that state approved all around the state. And the competition in terms of trade contract, the mechanical contractor, the bidding on these jobs, they are being more selective and potentially could drive the prices up a little bit. So there are a number of factors of whether how these projects will hold up in terms of financially. Again, the only example I can give you is really what I said before about Brookside School. We budgeted $3.3 million. The bids came in at $2 million plus soft costs. We came out to be about $2.5 million. So we did well in that project. But at the same time, it doesn't mean that all the projects are going to will do that well. But at the same time, it's very hard. If you get involved in cost estimating, you can estimate all you want. It's similar to another project we did recently. We estimated on the recreation center. We got the bid and it was 15-20% higher. And it really depends on the marketplace. We can estimate until the day that you got the bid and how many contractors interested in certain packages. It's a very tough question to answer because if something is worth $10 to buy, the bids come $11. It's like sometimes it's just because we're in Fairfield County, sometimes because of the market conditions, sometimes it could be a political situation that drives certain prices up, like steel or tariff and stuff like that too. Not to be, I don't mean to be political about this stuff, but it's just this thing that happened in the marketplace that we don't have the ability to control. So when we do the estimator, it's based on conceptual design. And then even abatement, we don't know how much abatement we have to do because it depends on where you cut in the building. You really have to do a full design before you figure out how much removal need to do. But we allow for a building for $150,000. Is that too much, too little? It's an estimate.
So Alan, to the best of your ability and knowledge, you're confident that the projected costs in today's market are, again, as reasonable and as accurate as they can be until you go out to bid.
Right.
I understand. I have another process. So you gave the example of Brookside. What happens if you go and you bid the Rayton Elementary School and those bids come in at $2 million? Do you go ahead? Or do you go ahead, or do you have to come back to the BET to authorize spending the 12 million instead of what was projected here in this memo of 10.6?
For some reason, your microphone is broken up, so I didn't get
So
everything.
Alan, let me try and restate it because I had an audio problem as well. Ann's question is a legitimate one, right? You use the Brookside example that works in our favor.
Right.
However, pick the Rowayton school and we go out to bid and the bids come in not at 10.6, but at 13 million.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have to come back to the BET and the Common Council for approval for the overage?
Absolutely. There's two issues when that happened. One is that the state is capped at that number. So there's a couple of things. First thing we do is we look at all the bid packages that went out to see whether there's any way we can improve the bidding process. There's value engineering and things like that to see, well, can we bid certain packages to a better number that comes in? At some point, at the end of the day, if that's the number, we really don't have any choices. The state will probably won't increase the budget since these are very quick and short projects for them. So I have to come back to the city and to do request a special appropriation, and that portion of it, let's just say, is $1 million higher. That $1 million would not be reimbursable by the state. So if you're going to fund any additional costs, it'll be fully on city's dime or $1 million.
Right.
In that situation. So there's nothing I can do if the project comes beyond the budget number. I cannot go forward because there's no money and I don't have the authority. We don't have, so we have to come back for a special appropriation. It's really challenging because if the bids come in high, the problem comes in is that by the time we go for even we would want to fund it, by the time we go for special appropriation, it would take us like maybe 2 months to do. And all the effort that goes in, it changes construction schedule and potentially changes the cost of the project. Typically, the contracted bids we hold a number for about 60 days. But with mechanical equipment, sometimes they put condition on it that we have to order the equipment at a certain time. So there's a number of factors that happens if the bids come in high. But at the same time, there's nothing I can do in terms of like approval without the BET and the Common Council.
That's all I wanted to know. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any additional questions? Seeing none, all in favor of approving the special appropriation as presented, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? The appropriation is approved. Thank you, Alan. Thank you, Jim.
Sure.
Tom, the next item is just an update from the contingency tracker. I don't think we need to move that for discussion. You just need to present it. And Tom, you're muted.
No change from last month, no contingency items in February, so we're holding steady at actuals of 2.15 million versus a budget of 2.6 in anticipation of a question regarding contract negotiations, over the last month or so, there seems to have been a little bit of movement. We're getting some more specific ad hoc requests for figuring out different types of scenarios. So I think it is moving along. Is that safe to say, Jared?
Yes. Moving along.
Okay.
I don't have any, there are no details that we can disclose about it, but moving along. And actually making good progress, I would say. More so than in previous months.
Great. Okay, any other questions on the contingency? Included in our package tonight is the monthly update on Norwalk Public School construction. Any questions about the updates that were provided to us for our information?
Hold on.
Yeah, you're talking about what Alan prepared for the major construction projects
Yes.
update?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a couple. Okay. First of all, on page 23 of 131. And I'm just one broad question. Everything's on budget and on time in essence, right? Because you say in the second paragraph, the last sentence, both projects are progressing well in terms of time and budget. I assume that means they're on time and on budget. Is that fair to say?
Yes. I didn't want to use the term on time and budget because so much use in common. But yes, we are for both projects. We are on time, on budget. I just want to make a little clarification that on Norwalk High School, we did not, when we went out to bid, we did not bid out the demolition of existing building and furniture and a couple other things because it's like, a year ago, we didn't want to bid something out that's projected to be demolished, the existing building to be demolished like 2 years later. So we are bidding that out. And we anticipate that we will need additional money for that. And we are scheduled to submit for the state for around like 5% more of our beyond the $239 million for additional money to cover that portion of the work. So it is planned. We are in conversation with the state, and in fact we're bidding out the demolition package. I think it's this month, so that we have actual dollar amount instead of projecting. Demolition of existing concrete building is a very challenging number to come up with because it's very unique in terms of it's a cast in place concrete building. It's not simple as in like it's a steel and brick. It's much tougher to demolish. So the deviation of numbers could be substantial. So we really want to bid it out to get actual number instead of continue to estimate. So that's why we're doing this this month to get better number, and we anticipate 5%. I mean, when we talk 5%, typically 5% really a contingency amount. It's not a lot of money. When we talk about Norwalk High School at $239 million, that's like $10 million. so it's substantial. But at the same time, we recognize this when we first approved the project. We know what we're doing and what we intend to do all along. So it's not a surprise or anything like that.
Well, it seems like in your next paragraph, you mentioned you're going to be applying for demolition money for the Oxford Street projects down in the South Norwalk School. So we'll see very quickly whether you're going to get money for that, right?
Let me explain that a little bit. South Norwalk School, just a little bit of history. South Norwalk Schools, when we first developed the project, we were basing on the reimbursable rates of 22% for new construction. But since then, we got approved for 60% reimbursement. So for a project $76 million, we actually, the city, by getting that reimbursement rate, we actually save ourselves like $21 million, over $20 million on that project, just for background. So when we developed the project, we only acquired a Hatch and Bailey building. I know this is a little long story, you can pardon me a little bit. So we only acquired Hatch and Bailey property. And that's, generally speaking, it's pretty much enough space to develop a building, a project, a school. But at the same time, we felt that Oxford Street properties, there's a spy property along the side, and also the spur line on South Main Street. It's a substantial improvement to the overall project in terms of site arrangement, parking, drop off, and all those factors, and open space. So we applied to the state for $76 million project, and the state approved a $76 million project. Thereafter, we decided the city and through the BET and the Common Council, we decided to go and acquire those properties. 5 pieces of property in Oxford and 1 piece of property. So, and I'm pretty sure you guys, the commission remember this. So we went out, we put together about $2.9 million for acquisition costs, but the project never have design money and construction money for the Oxford property. So this year we requested regular capital budget appropriation, $3.37 million, I think it was, for additional money for land acquisition, excuse me, also money for relocation, and also $2.2 million of that $3.37 million for construction costs for the area for the Oxford properties. We requested and the city approved it, that money. As we're looking at this project, we actually have financial space in our $76 million project to include the construction cost of $2.2 million within the $76 million. So me and Jim went to the state and requested approval to incorporate the construction costs of the Oxford property as part of $76 million. And recently we got approval to do that. By doing this, we actually made the $2.2 million eligible for reimbursement as well. I'm not sure you follow it, but in any way, so when you look at my budget summary, there's an item for, there's a top, if you look at the budget sheet, there's one account that's $3.37 million. Of that, I think $1.7 million or so is for land acquisition and relocation, 1.2, 1.7, something like that. And the other $2.2 million is really for construction. That money will not be we don't need to touch that money anymore. So there's a surplus in there in the future as we move forward in the future. Because we move that expenditure, that money, we actually put it into the $76 million so we can get 60% reimbursement, roughly 60%, because certain things they don't fully reimburse. So potentially by doing this, the city gain another $1 million or so worth of reimbursement from the state.
Okay. And I guess this might be for Jared. How are the monthly reimbursements coming, Jared, on the schools so far? Are they coming smoothly?
I think that's probably a better question for Alan and Jim as well.
Yes, they have been. And one of the reasons why that is because we try to submit them as soon as we get a payment from the state. We get them teed up ahead of time. And when the state pays, because we're locked out of the system until the state actually pays us. So as soon as that happens, we submit the next one. And it took a little catch up to get to this point, but right now we're on basically a monthly payment process. It may only be 4 to 5 invoices that we're submitting on a monthly basis, but it gets it done much quicker from the state's perspective. And also when you're looking at the invoices from the construction firms themselves, especially on Norwalk, on Norwalk High School, those monthly requisitions are about $4 to $5 million alone. So we are on a monthly process. We're doing our best to stay on that monthly process. As long as the state pays us on a monthly process, we can continue doing that.
Yeah, it's also important to note that Norwalk High School is 80% reimbursement. So the quickest we get this money back, the less we have to lay out the money for the state.
Correct.
Yeah, it's going to help our cash flow.
Right.
I noticed also on page 24, Alan, you mentioned on part B, you mentioned tariffs. That's interesting. Changes in tariffs are typically an exclusion in construction contracts. So if there is a raise in tariffs with Canada and stuff, with wood and everything, those are excluded, meaning what?
They're eligible to request additional compensation.
Okay.
Because there's something that beyond their control. So when they bid on a project, they know what the value of steel is, today's value, and projecting that steel is going to be erected in 6 months. So they bid it based on that schedule and pricing, market pricing at the time, and projecting out. but when they change the tariff, it really affects, again, steel, this happened a number of years ago, back in 2006 or 7. I think China was in a boom, construction boom, so you're buying all the steel all over the world. So the steel value went up quite a bit. We were finished with construction of the science wing, and the global study wing, but it turned out to affect pricing for conduit, electrical conduit. We actually went on and bought 3 trailers of electrical conduit installed on site just to manage the demand for steel metal during that time. So for these 2 projects, I mean, especially South North School, we are way beyond we are doing electrical work, duct work, and stuff that's all bought out, and that project should be finished in another 3 months or so. Right.
I don't mean to cut the
That's
discussion.
not a risk.
Yep. I don't mean to cut the discussion short, but we still have the capital budget to get
Sure.
to this evening. And I believe you had a question before we moved though.
Yes, can we go
Thank you.
can we go to page 45? So this outlines spending and reimbursement. So for the fourth quarter 2024, an outlay, now we're on the Newark High School, an outlay of 10 million, but it appears we've only gotten back 4.7. And it still is to be determined on what we get back for the first fiscal quarter of 2025 or July. Can you square, how do these numbers square with your commentary about that we've been successful in getting all our money that we need to get back?
I don't have that page in front of me, so this is the cash flow, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
the cash.
Cash flow generally, it's not it really is not indicator of the health of the projects. It really is just a cash flow in terms of like cash flow covering the state share of the money, so we have enough money to. Cash flow is originally based on projection. Let's say this month I intend to spend $10 million. But at the same time is that by the time we get those statements in and prepare the report, we may not capture the new one and push to the next month. So 1 month could be, it's just a projection originally, but at the same time, depends on how it comes in when we spend the money. The money that we intend to spend, it's actually for the next period and not this period. And also, it doesn't mean anything in the sense that doesn't mean that we are over budget, under budget, or late. It doesn't mean too much. It's really just a cash flow issue. It really is the budget summary that we can check the quad, how we're doing financially with the project, because the number of provided under the budget summary, it's actually the latest number we have in terms of like how much we're spending for optex, how much change order we've done. And so that's really the health of the project, really from the budget update.
I understand, but the discussion that we've been having is on our reimbursement rates. So what this chart though says is that, and the concern has always been is how quickly is the state going to be reimbursing us? And right now, this says to me that we've put out $32 million. And we've submitted, but we've only received, I mean, that includes the most recent quarter, but we've only received 4.7 million from the state. Is that correct?
I think we, and I have to double check this, but I do believe we got the 12 million for the second quarter, the October to December of 24 as well. And like I said, I have to double check.
That's fine. Could you just come back with maybe cash flow that says what we've received and what we've outlaid? If this is not representative of the actual cash flow numbers, if you could please send us the actual cash flow numbers.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I want to double check that. I got to check with Dan.
Great, thank you.
Any final questions on this topic? Thank you, Alan. Thank you, Jim. Moving to the last item, I believe it's the last item on our agenda. The capital budget cap. Can I get someone to move that for discussion and approval, please?
So moved, Troy.
Thank you, Troy. Just for the record, before we move forward with our discussion here, I'll remind us as a BET that the capital budget works opposite the operating budget in that we set the cap and the Common Council goes through the detailed line item review on each and every project. So our job is to really determine if the recommended cap of 74,662,646 dollars is appropriate based on where we are. And then the Common Council works with the teams on the individual line item budgets. So Tom, Jared, do you want to speak to this, please, and how we got to the mayor's recommendation, which again is already pared down from the original requests, but still a pretty significant number. Tom, you're on mute once again.
At least I'm consistent. Yeah, so we are doing this on the timeline about a month ahead of what we've done it historically, and the reason for that is the way the calendar falls. The April BET meeting is on April 7th this year, and that would put us behind some of the charter deadline requirements that are coming up for other boards and commissions. So we decided to pull this one forward. Realistically, the trigger for this is the mayor's final recommendations, which we did meet with him last week and receive. So the first item in the package is the transmittal letter from the BET to the Common Council with all the totals. I want to point out that there is one error on the net amount in the second paragraph. I'll just read this out real quickly. But assuming this gets passed, Ed, sometime this week you'll come in and sign this, and then it'll officially be on its way to the Common Council. But in advance of that, I will make this correction. This last line of the second paragraph, the net amount for the city and Board of Education is $54,837,646. And you'll see that in the totals of the project list, the 4-page project list that follows this transmittal letter in the package. This is reflective of guidance from our bond advisor. Everyone will recall hearing about the $500 total debt limit that we talked about for several years. And then last year, Bill Lindsay came and presented to us during the April BET meeting. Moody's, which is the biggest and arguably the most influential of the 3 rating agencies, came out with a new methodology for calculating debt limits, and our limit went from 500 million to 650 million, partly because of the methodology change, and also partly because of our strong financial history in terms of coming in under budget on the operating side, as well as healthy rainy day reserves. So we're looking at 650 million, and with this proposed recommended, the mayor's recommended amount, inclusive of this proposal, we will be at 605 million. So would happy to address any questions that anybody might have, or any discussion that you'd like to have on any part of this.
I have a number of questions. Can we, it's not in your board package, but can we go to email that you sent out? Maybe it was in February, that had the letter. It was a transmittal letter from Mr. Schmidt. And then to the Moody's, that also included the Moody's presentation from last April.
Correct, yeah.
Okay, so if we could go to the Moody's presentation from last April to page 13. This, you saying that the ending balance here would be 605.
Yes.
How is that different than when this was done last year? I realize it was done last year, where the projected ending balance was going to be 631.
That would be inclusive of our latest cash flow estimation. So recall that on a quarterly basis, we go out to all the departments and including Alan and Jim and ask them for their spending estimates and projections over the coming 2 years. And we use that as part of the calculation to get us to what's in the pipeline, if you will. And it also helps us figure out how much we need to bond for every August. So yeah, so it was probably 504 at the time, at the end of or when Bill did put together this presentation, but based on other approvals and things that have come along, we're at about 520, I think, 525. So that plus the 75 we're looking for here gets us to the 605.
Okay, so what is the current balance? What was the debt balance at the beginning of this fiscal year?
I don't know offhand. Do you recall, Jared?
What's the question?
What
did-
was the debt balance at the beginning of this fiscal year? In last year's presentation, which I understand is last year, it said 503. But Tom, you just mentioned something that was 520.
Yeah, so what I was explaining, Jared, was how we take into account the cash flow projections from all the various departments and how that can change depending on what's in the pipeline
Yeah,
and
sure.
when people are looking to get things done.
Yeah.
So-
I don't know if I have that number offhand where we started, but we could get that for sure.
Okay, is it in the audited financials?
And not challenging you, just trying to understand where you're trying to head with this. Are you trying to make sure that the actual debt that we're going to encumber is 605, that it's not a different number? I just want to follow the logic with you. That's all. That's my only reason for asking.
The debt waterfall last year shows that at the end of this fiscal year, we're pretty much at the 6 cap. And there are a couple of issues. And I went back. So I was on the planning commission, which years ago would approve capital. And at that point of time, the enterprise funds in 2015, the capital expenditure was $23.8 million. And right now we're talking about something that's almost double that. And that is an 8.7% growth in our capital expenditures. It shows on the debt waterfall that the regenerative capacity of our cash flow is like $38 million. And so in that analysis, my question would be, first off, we have 155, according to this presentation, 155 million of authorized but unissued capital projects. So when we go through the debt waterfall, there's an amortization of that number by about $31 million. So my question to Mr. Schmidt and Mr. Ellis is, how can we turn this 155 of authorized unissued, how can we turn that into something that looks more like 75? How do we cut it in half, given that there's 21 million of authorized but unissued capital projects that is prior to 2020? So how do we just nix that And how do we mix more money over the last 5 years that's authorized and unissued? Because that is the amortization of the office but unissued in your debt waterfall. Okay, so that's number one. Number two, I think given that the spending, let's see, so last year the capital spending was $35.8 million. And now we're talking about $55 million. The capital expenditure, given how close we are to our debt ceiling, plus all the uncertainty that we're going to have with Trump, because we may be faced with decisions like, they're going to take away SNAP for children, so, and free lunch. So does that mean we, the city, are going to pick up that slack? Okay, so there's a lot of budgetary uncertainty in addition to the capital expenditures that I think we should be conservative, because we have committed to spend $400 million on 2 schools over the next 3 years. Our share of it, based on Jared's analysis, is going to be $100 million. So if you tell me that we're going to be spending $400 million, that's a lot of money. Or $100 million is still a lot of money. We should be tightening our belts as tight as possible. So to even have a flat capital budget from last year, it should be down if we're spending $100 million of the taxpayer money on these 2 schools, because we have to finish the schools. The other things can be delayed. We should be looking at a flat capital budget from last year, not $54 million, but 35. I don't know where to cut, but we met it last year at 35. We need it again this year.
Okay. You broke up for me a little bit there.
So,
And so I just want to repeat it. The tail end, basically. I believe what you're advocating for on the city side is that we take the cap down from 55 to 38.
Yes,
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure I heard it
it's not
properly.
38, 35.8 million flat to last year.
35.8. So you're suggesting we take the city side cap down by $20 million.
Correct.
Okay. Again, I'm not debating it, just given some of the audio issues, I want to make sure I heard it properly.
And my argument is that we've committed to spending $100 million over the next couple of years, which I did the math, and the carrying cost of is with 28,000 units is $5,000 per residence, which is about 1 year's worth of property taxes for somebody, which we've committed for the schools. We're obligated, I believe, to tighten our belts elsewhere. We can't just go and say, oh, let's just spend more money, especially when we are this tight. And I think that we're going to see volatility in the bond market, the municipal bond market. It's going to come under more pressure because states and municipalities are going to be unfunded, in addition to just the greater volatility that we're seeing in the market right now because all of the Doge back and forth. God only knows where we put the macroeconomic trends of a war in Ukraine and Israel and Taiwan. So I think we're looking at a great deal of uncertainty in the future. And I think we have to be conservative because we need to retain some powder, some dry powder that may help us make some important decisions of cuts that are going to be down the line. So it looks like SNAP and the free lunch is okay for this year, but for next fiscal year, when it may go away, we need to decide as a board that we do want to fund. It's going to come from somewhere. So there's just a lot of money that's come in. There's just a high level of uncertainty, and you can't tell me that if 36 million was okay last year, 36 million should be okay this year too.
Okay, appreciate your point of view. Thank you. Just want to hear from others if we may.
Mr. Chairman, it's Troy.
Yes, Troy.
Okay, listen, I listened to the Common Council meeting last week when they set the cap for us, the operating budget, and I heard the residents of the town. And the word was being, the word they used was crisis. I've heard that a number of times, including the mayor. And I hate to say it, but that word's going to be a good word after what we see what's going to happen with what's going on in Washington. I don't know about anyone else. I don't want to be a doomsdayer, but crisis is, I mean, we haven't seen anything here. So I have to say that as we were approving something last month for $1.1 million, I think that would have helped in our little tight budget this year. But listen, that's done. What's done is done. I think, like Ann said, that it's fair that both the city, we're asking the Board of Ed to take a big haircut. So on the capital budget, I think we need to take just as much of a haircut. I like what I saw with the regard to what the mayor did. The finance team did make some original cuts, but I have to say, and I asked Tom earlier, whatever the city spent last year, listen, I do it in my house. I know what I have. I don't spend more than I have. So whatever we paid last year, whatever we paid back last year, Tom and Jared, that's the number I feel comfortable with this year. So whether it's 35 or I don't know what that number is on the city side. I mean, obviously we got to let the Board of Ed do their things with the capital budget, but definitely need savings on this capital budget this year. This is not the time. I mean, we just have to be extra prudent this year. And I say we just take a pause, get these schools done, get through this, get to the midterms with this administration and see where we are, because this is not going to be a fun situation. So I would just say in short, whatever we paid back last year, Tom, you can get us that number, or Jared. That's the number I'm comfortable with. I'm not comfortable with this capital budget tonight. So,
Okay. Kendrick, your thoughts?
No comments from me.
Okay. Tom, do we have the number that Troy is asking about?
I don't know that we have it offhand. Do we need that from Bill, Jared?
Yeah, we will, yeah, we can get that from Bill. So just to be clear though, you're looking for the debt that got paid down last year?
yes.
Look
Yeah,
at page 13 of this, the debt water.
Are you looking at principal and interest?
I think this is just principal. It's what's because it says it's reduction and it's showing the ending balance would be. If we could have an 8 of that, I think that would be useful, because I heard Tom say that we're starting out at 524, but this says 503, and I just want to know where we're starting and where we're going to end relative to 650. And
So can I
in this now, starting at 503, With the new capital, it's showing that we're 20 million shy of the 650, which is too close for comfort. And it shows that for the following year, 26 over 27, we're going to be over that 650 cap by $120 million. So that means AAA goes to AA, maybe, maybe not. But I did a little investigating, and spread in the municipal market right now between AAAs and AAs is 130 basis points. So it would affect our historical borrowings, but it would affect our future borrowings, which seem to just get higher.
What we could do is have our municipal financial advisor update this, because this is from last year.
Yes, it is.
So some of the numbers that you're seeing there, like the 155 and authorized unissued, is significantly lower than that. And as we said, in terms of where we are in our total debt load, we would be, after approving this, we would be at about 605 compared to the $650 million cap. And then there's some other metrics as well that we talk about. We're at about 2.1, right about 2.1% in terms of the debt to full value of our of property, which is pretty much right about where we want to be, right around 2%. Our debt service to budget ratio, we're at 9.2%. And I'm not discounting what you're saying and what your concerns about. They're founded. And I understand that we need to do some trimming. I think that this plan is within the ranges, within the limits, and definitely we would need to do some cutting on this in next year's plan for sure.
If I may,
I think some of the other things that you had included in your analysis, I was trying to follow. You were throwing around a lot of numbers, so I was trying to follow everything and take some notes. Some of the I think you were including in there the enterprise funds, and that doesn't get included in that.
I am not including the enterprise, those two, the parking and the.
No, I'm not, Troy. I wasn't referring to what you were saying. I think Ann had mentioned some of the increase
sorry.
in the enterprise funds that don't get factored into our debt load.
Let me jump in here if I may for a minute, Jared, because
sure.
I do share Ms. Yang's concern that we are getting very, very close to the top end of our debt ceiling. I do share the concerns raised that we continue to say we will just kick this can down the road another year, right? And make it somebody else's problem next year or deal with it next year. I don't believe we are in a position where we can continue to do that, right? We continue to just ignore things and say we'll figure it out next year. Given where we are in the calendar and the fact that we have a significant number of budget reviews over the next several weeks, and this would require another BET meeting to be put on the calendar to re-review this, I'd like to throw a proposal out there that everyone can reject, and we can schedule another meeting if we want more data. But I would like to throw a proposal out there that says instead of that we basically are going to take the capital budget ceiling or the capital budget cap down by $20 million to 54,662.
so that would be roughly 30.
That's roughly flat year to year.
Good. I agree with,
Others' reaction to that? We've got 4 members of the BET here tonight, so we can't be split down the middle on this one. Others' thoughts?
Sounds good. I agree.
Okay. Troy, your thought?
You said is that the flat number? I mean, I'm not sure.
That gets
Oh,
us to
yeah, bring the
roughly
capital
flat.
budget. I'm just saying to the city side. I'm not saying to the Board of Ed side.
Again, we set a cap. How that cap is distributed is up to the Common Council and others. The cap right now is proposed at 74, based
Right.
on the data that Ann and others presented.
Right.
Taking it down by roughly $20 million would make it flat year to year at 54. It is then up to the Common Council to determine how that gets distributed.
Yeah, I think I could live. I think I could live with that.
I mean, a lot of people are going to be upset with it. There are many challenges that we will present as we look at what's in that capital budget. But again, I think to be fiscally responsible, leave us some wiggle room given the very uncertain geopolitical environment that we live in. We got to stop making it next year's problem.
I definitely agree with that. I'm looking at this debt service line on, on the presentation that Jared did. Debt service is the biggest item, obviously, $41 million. I mean, the people are going to be paying 14% this year in the districts, 13%. I mean, I think that's unacceptable. I mean, listen, I think that's unacceptable. So I guess I could, yeah, that makes, I think that makes definitely in the right direction.
All right. Again, I know that's going to cause lots of pain and suffering on many departments, but all in favor of setting a capital budget cap at $54,662,646 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? So Tom, we're going to need to recraft this letter. Jared, I am happy to stand beside you as we need to talk to people in the city about needing to tighten our belt further. But the buck stops with us.
And can
Okay.
I just make one clarification on that? On the debt waterfall, the fiscal 25-26 year talks about new capital of 135. So that was reflective of the 5-year capital plan last year. So those were items that were in the pipeline. So that if we were to update, or when we update this, that 135 becomes 75 as of tonight, or 55 based on the vote.
it's good.
Just for clarification.
Understood, right? And there's
It gives us room for a few years to make sure these 2 major capital projects completed with enough money.
Yep. I completely agree. Nobody likes being right up to their budget. Everybody needs buffer, including the city of Norwalk, particularly given the huge projects and the uncertain environment that we live in. So Tom, if you'll just let me know when you have a revised letter, I will then go ahead and meet you at City Hall to sign it.
Can we make a motion to put on this? Or have we already done that? Have we voted?
Yes, we did.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yes, we did.
What was the vote? I didn't even know.
To take the cap down to 50.
Oh, no. But what was the vote totals? I didn't.
It was unanimous.
Oh, I didn't know. Okay. I
It was-
didn't see anywhere. I don't have everyone else. So
No, that's okay. That's okay. It was unanimous. All right. I believe that brings us Scrolling back up just to make sure. I believe that brings us to the end of our agenda for this evening. I will remind us that we reconvene tomorrow with the first of our departmental budget reviews. And they continue tomorrow, Wednesday and Thursday, then we're off for a week, and then they're again the following week. Okay,
Mr. Chairman, can I just make one more comment before we
Certainly.
close? I just want to say, I know the mayor's not here, but I wanted to thank him publicly for his 12 years of service. Obviously, everyone heard the news today. He's been a pleasure to work with, and he's been good for the city of Norwalk, and I wish him the best in his retirement days. So just wanted to say that.
Thank you, and that is now on record. With that, can I get a motion to adjourn, please? Thank you, Ann. We are adjourned. We will speak to you tomorrow evening. Have a
All right,
nice
and
night.
everybody,
Tomorrow night.
Good
night.
everybody, make sure you have the links for tomorrow night. Don't wait till 6:27 to check. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Will do. Thank you.
Thank you. Tom, what was that? I'm sorry. What did you say, Tom?
Make sure you have the links for the rest of this week, the
Oh,
Zoom
okay.
links. We had a little challenge getting everything.
I know,
out.
because
So
Jarrett sends, I try to use the one Jarrett sends.
that one's good for the regular BETs. We had to shift gears a little bit because the departmental meetings are a little bit out of the norm.
Also, use the one that Lola sent us.
Correct, yeah. And if you don't have it, I'll send it to the BET right now.
I'll
just as a
try
reminder.
to do it to log in a little earlier. Okay.
Okay, sounds good. All right, thank you.
Thanks, all.
All right, see you tomorrow.